I'm Robert Tassi. I'm a retired schooner captain currently living in Maine. I was co-owner with my wife of the National Historic Landmark sailing vessel schooner Timberwind, home ported in Rockport, Maine, for about 18 years. She achieved National Historic Landmark status and was part of a grand fleet of schooners in Maine, which were marketed by what was then referred to as the Maine Windjammer Association. It was a advertising arm, a marketing arm that we owned and funded. They did not own the vessels. We owned the vessels individually. There were 14 of us. All the vessels were privately owned, and they were restored to magnificence in an effort to haul passengers. Some of us specialized in 3, 4, and 6-day cruises for 22 to 35 passengers. And the main feature of the event was being aboard a historic schooner and sailing the near pristine waters of Penobscot Bay in the Gulf of Maine. A schooner, by definition, is a vessel that has 2 or more masts, with the main mast being in the exact center of the vessel. Maine produced many thousands of schooners over its building history, from the thousands of undocumented 2-masted vessels that ran cargo up and down the coast. In the 19th century, those were the trucks of the 19th century. If cargo got moved, whatever kind of good it was, dry good, perishables, whatever, it got moved by schooner between Boston and further up north into Canada, Nova Scotia. The 2-masted vessels were considered mom and pop operations, basically. The Gloucester schooner fleets, for example, all the cargo carriers that came up the coast. My vessel was a pilot vessel, specifically designed to guide or transfer a human pilot to a ship, and that pilot would then take command of the ship and bring it into Portland Harbor. And then she was converted into a passenger schooner in the late 60s, early 70s by Captain Bill Alexander. Having left a career in the music business, which was not an easy career to get and not an easy career to keep, I didn't exactly know what to expect coming into the fleet as a 44-year-old deckhand, but I worked my way up from deckhand to first officer to auxiliary captain to owner in a 4-year period of time, which was fast-tracking pretty well. Didn't really understand at all the parameters of what owning a National Historic Landmark vessel was going to be about until I signed the contract with the bank. And then the reality came crashing in terms of what the financial commitments were going to be. And in comparison to the music business, which I had already talked about in terms of its difficulty, the schooner business was, in fact, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. The commitment to it, financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, it takes over your entire life, and it has to be that way. There's no other way to own something like that. In fact, it's ridiculous to say you owned a schooner. The schooner owned you from the moment you signed the papers, and it didn't let you go until somebody else signed them next. So, but it was an incredible lifestyle, and I raised my kids aboard the vessel. They learned traditional skills. I trained many a young man to be competent professional sailors. Quite a few of them have gone on to be captains themselves and have their families involved in the schooner business. And as these industries go through transitions, they're at a perilous time again. The world doesn't need these boats anymore. The only attraction to them is that people want to touch history, and we're having to upgrade and modernize and deal with the things of the modern world that weren't part of how these vessels were designed originally. My vessel is probably the most rustic of them all in terms of her accommodations. They were highly varnished, freshly painted, small cabins, but they didn't have any modern amenities to them at all. They had a light and a bunk, and a wash basin. The activities were what took place on deck. The actual operation of a historic vessel, passengers got to be involved in that to the extent that they could and wanted to, and that was offset by skilled crew that I would painstakingly train year after year. Many times I was fortunate to keep crew, at least one on every cycle, sometimes two, that would help me train the next crew, that would help me train the next crew, and so on. So I ended up with years and years of really great crew, many of which I still stay in touch with. And I found it to be a very aesthetically fulfilling lifestyle. You have to be passionate about to do it, or it will kill you. And it is fraught with dangers, and it is fraught with financial peril. I emerged from the experience completely broke, literally. That is not an exaggeration. After putting $1.2 million into the business and the rebuild and all the things that I had to do to keep the business going, I ended up with $340 when it was all said and done. Best fun I've ever had going broke.